In this tutorial, we will introduce the Spring JDBCDAOSupport class for accessing and manipulating data in a database. We will use the DAO pattern to extend our DAO implementation with the JDBCDAOSupport class. The JDBCDaoSupport class provides us with access to the Spring JDBCTemplate, and the Spring JDBCTemplate in turn provides us with DB access and connection management that will reduce the overhead of what is known as boilerplate code. For my YouTube students, this slideshow is part of a YouTube playlist. The playlist URL will be listed in the description and comments of this lesson. All source code for this playlist will be available for free in a GitHub repository. These are the high-level steps we will perform in this lesson. First, we will create a new JDBC 9 module using Maven in IntelliJ. Then we will use the beans.xml to define the data source and DAO access bean. On the third step, we will create our DAO JDBC DAO interface and implementation. And here we will extend the JDBC DAO support class, which in turn extends the DAO support class. And on the final step, we will create the main method to test our JDBC DAO support class implementation with the create, read, update, and delete capabilities. So looking at our Markdown documentation now, we will start by creating the new Java Maven module in IntelliJ. Then we will create our standard package, and we will update our pom.xml files. Now in this case, we will use the JDBC regular DAO module as a guide for setting up our POM dependencies and our data source. So back in IntelliJ now, and let's create our new JDBC 9 module. Our artifact coordinates look good. And we'll go back to JDB 7 to bring back our Maven property values. We will also bring over the dependencies. Load Maven changes. Now we can load Maven changes. And we will create our new package. Back to our Markdown documentation. We've completed steps 1, 2, and 3. So step 4 is to create the Charity DAO interface and implementation. We will start by creating the Charity model objects and its related model objects. We won't be implementing the foreign key relationships. And the important step here is we will extend from the JDBC DAO support class provided by Spring, which in turn provides us with the Spring JDBC template. And then we will create the working insert charity method and the working find charity by tax ID method. And essentially what we're doing is we're repeating all the steps we did in JDBC 7 with direct JDBC, now with using the Spring JDBC template, which means all the database connection handling, the result set handling will be done by the JDBC template code, and we won't have to write any of that boilerplate code. And just to reiterate, we will keep it as simple in terms of our object graph as we did in JDBC 7. So back in IntelliJ, and this is where I will start cutting and pasting in order to save time. So we'll start by pasting in our models And this is our charity object and its related objects. And now I will paste in the data access object. So here's our interface with insert, update, delete, and find charity by tax ID. We see we've added the insert batch, and here is our JDBC template implementation class, which we see extends the JDBCDAOSupport class, and it implements our interface. And if we look at the JDBCDAOSupport class, we see that it contains the JDBCTemplate class. It contains the set data source and get data source, and also a way of getting and setting the JDBC template. And then the JDBCDAOSupport class in turn extends the DAOSupport class. And if we look at the DAOSupport class, we see it has bean property management, and it also implements the initializing bean, which is the implementation of the after property set method. So basically, what we are looking at now is all the code that we previously had to code ourselves in direct JDBC in JDBC 7 are now provided for us by the Spring JDBC support class and the JDBC template class. So you'll see that the code is still there, but now it's not your problem. It is the Spring developer's problem. Now back to our Markdown documentation. And in step 5, we see the creation of the application with the main method that runs the insert and find method. We're going to add the beans.xml file, and we'll use the class path XML application context to obtain the Spring context and the Spring data source bean. And then we'll look at the DAO implementation object in the main method. We will create the charity object and insert it using the DAO. And then we will find the charity in the database using the DAO. And in our demonstration of our main method, we will first have to clear out our charity table. And then there are 4 different steps we will walk through. First, we will demonstrate using the JDBC template update method to insert the new charity. Then we will demonstrate using a prepared statement creator with the JDBC template. And related to that, we'll look at an inline prepared statement creator with the JDBC template. And finally, we will look at the inline prepared statement creator with the prepared statement setter in the JDBC template. And of course, we'll run everything from within IntelliJ. So back in IntelliJ, let's bring over our beans.xml file. Configure application context. And we'll see we use the MariaDB pool data source, and we define our charity DAO bean using the JDBC template charity DAO implementation. Next, we will bring over our main application and method. And we'll start with getting the data source bean, getting the charity DAO bean, creating a new charity that includes a new category. We'll do the charity DAO insert. We get the returned charity ID back, and then we'll do the find by charity tax ID, and we print out the charity that we've returned from the database. So let's look at the implementation of insert. We'll see we create the SQL insert charity SQL statement. Then using the JDBCDaoSupport class, we get the JDBC template and we run the update method of the JDBC template, passing in the SQL statement and all the values that are expected in this SQL statement. This is our first demonstration, basically using the JDBC template update to insert a new charity. And then we'll look at find by charity tax ID. We see we've got a SQL query. We've got a bean property row manager with the charity class, from which we create the charity row mapper. And then we get the JDBC template and run query for object with SQL query, the charity row mapper, and the charity tax ID. So you can already see that all the boilerplate code is gone and everything is kind of managed by the JDBC template itself. Now looking at our database, making sure that there are no entries in the charity table. There are no entries in the charity category relationship table. And looking at the category table, we see there are 10 existing entries. So let's run the clean install in our root module. That looks good. So let's have a look at main and we'll try and run it. And this looks good. We've created the charity. We got the charity ID back and we print the charity. So let's look at our database. We see we have a charity inserted here with charity ID 2. Looking at charity category, we don't see any values because we are not updating any relationships. And looking at category, we see no change as well. So going back to our insert, this means all the code executed as expected. We only insert into the charity and we return from the charity. Now let's try step 2 of our demonstration of using the JDBC template. So we'll comment out step 1 and uncomment step 2, where we use an update statement from the JDBC template and we pass in the new insert charity statement creator with the charity object. This is our insert charity statement creator. We see that it implements the prepared statement creator, and in here we have the create prepared statement and we pass in the charity values. So we can also comment out this SQL statement because we already saw that we now have the SQL statement inside of the create prepared statement. And now let's run this, but before we run it, obviously we need to clear out our database. Categories look good. Charities needs to be cleared out. Charity category looks good. So let's clear out the charity table. We'll go to the module that contains our SQL script. And we run this SQL script to clear it out. And it looks good. Let's look if it's been emptied out. Yes. So now we can run our Maven clean install again. And let's head over to our main method. And we'll run it. This looks good. We've got our generated charity ID of 1 now because we cleared out the database table. And we get it back with the find charity by tax ID. And here we see that it has been inserted correctly. So let's go back to our code and we'll go to step 3. We'll comment out step 2 and we'll uncomment step 3. We'll import the necessary class. And looking at our step 3, we use the JDBC template update and we pass in an inlined new prepared statement creator with the SQL and the charity values, and we return the prepared statement. So let's go ahead and clear out the database again. Our database has been cleared out, which means we can go back and run our main method again. And this looks good. The insert and find was successful again. And our charity has been inserted. So steps 3 is successful. Now we'll go on to step 4. So we'll comment out step 3. Import the class, and we see we pass in the SQL insert charity here, so we'll have to uncomment it. So here we use the JDBC template update. We pass in the SQL and a new prepared statement setter, where we set the values of the prepared statement in the overwritten method with all the values from the charity. So this means it's time to clear out the table again. And it's emptied out successful. Now we can go back and run the main method. This looks good. Once again, we've inserted the new charity and it's been updated in the database. So now we can go on to the next demonstration step. And this is running step 5. Now in step 5, we are going to run insert batch and we'll pass in a list of charities. We get the JDBC template, we run batch update with the SQL code, and we pass in the new batch prepared statement setter with a prepared statement and an iterator for the charity in the list that we pass in, and then all the values we get from the charity, and then we return the charity list size. So this means we'll have to go back to our main method and uncomment the batch code. So we see we create a new charity, we insert, and then we create 2 new charities, and we pass in the list of these 3 charities into our list, and we call the insert batch. So we'll comment out our insert and find by here, and we will clear out the charity table. Cleared. So let's go to the main method and run the insert batch demonstration code. And this looks good. It looks like we've created and inserted the 3 charities within the batch method. So let's have a look at our database. And there we have our demonstration of batch inserting the charities. And this concludes our first demonstration of using the JDBC template for inserting and finding data in a database table.